there's that expression, never say never. I mean, that is just so messed up, I'm telling you. I mean, look at this. What? That just looks wrong. Nothing. There's no more leaks on Big Black. That just blows my mind. It's been years. Surprise in store for you. You know, I said I was done, but sometimes you just can't walk away from it. It's that garbage. It's all this stuff. I guess I just couldn't help myself. So we're back at it. Decided to go ahead and do another job. It's one of those things where it's easy money, you know? This job is going to take me a heck of a lot longer than normal because I'm kind of going to turn it into an instructional video on how to hang sheetrock. We're going to be bringing the sheetrock depending upon how this layout is, all right? So a lot of times what it has to do with is it has to do with how you lay stuff out. So sometimes you have to like look at the wall and see what's going to be the easiest way to hang something. Whether if you're going to start from the bottom of a wall or if you're going to start from the top. It all depends upon how like sheets lay out. This is just typical, you know, rehab kind of remodel construction that you see, especially like in a basement area. You got pipes and stuff you got to deal with, so something like that. Maybe I'll like loop around that pipe, or I'll just come right to the top of it. We'll see. I'll probably loop around it, but I'm gonna shoot my sheets up as high as they can go, and then you can see how things are furred out. So this is furred out right here against the 2x4s that are here, and what they do is they use a furring strip so that you can bring your sheetrock down and over. Now, you can see all around there. Oop, autofocus, come on, let's go. That's usually what you see. As far as a sheetrocker goes, you know, sometimes you have to be careful of, you know, depth of pipes and mark things out. You got wires going everywhere. You want to make sure, like, this wire's not crossing over the stud like that. You know, just little things to watch out for. The other thing to do, too, is when you're sheetrocking, when you get kind of like, I guess, an overall view of the room, you want to check and see where your nailers are and make sure you have them. So a nailer basically is a stud. And in your corners, it's more important because when you look at this, we've only got about 1 inch of reveal of this stud right here, and then we've got the full 1.5 inches on this stud. That's going to kind of lean me towards sheetrocking that wall first. That way I can get screws into my corner all the way down. Then I can put this piece on. So they also call that a wet wall. Reason why they call that a wet wall is because, well, there's pipes. You can see right there, NG, that means no glue. So that just makes it easier for the installation guy, me, to take that out and do my sheetrock up against it, cut all my holes. There's your outlets. I like to pack these wires in as I go. You take the back side of the hatchet or the hammer and you kind of punch it in, and that way the wires stay flush. That way when you take your router bit and you plunge it in and go to the box, you're not going to catch any of these wires, because if these wires are hanging out like that, the sheet's going to come out against it. And if you're not, you know, coming to the edge here, if you punch your router bit in here, you're going to come across those wires and nick them. And depending upon how the roll of wire is in the box, you may bare the wire and they could have issues later. The electrician's not going to always catch something like that either. Over here, we're going to be taking sheetrock or blue board, that you call it, and we're going to be butting up against there, but the problem with that is there's nothing to catch onto the edge. So what I'll have to do is I'll have to take a razor blade and slice that about 1/2 inch into this board, and that way I'll have something for that blue board to attach to on that piece of stud. You get a closet like this, wires typically jumping how they shouldn't. See this right here? If I'm going to be sheetrocking this wall all the way up, why is that wire right there like that? It's easy. So then you can see in here, different types of insulation. So normally when you get a rigid insulation like that, it's because the depth of the wall isn't as deep as like what you've got right here. So on here you can see it's got a 2x4 frame, so they can fill this with just regular batting insulation. And on this one right here, you can see there's a piece of concrete. So this is what's called a soffit right here. So that's actually going to be sheetrocked. We'll end up sheetrocking probably that board right there all the way across. We've got to meet up to that board. So we've got 5/8 there. And that's a textured wall. So what's going to happen is the plasters are going to have to kind of just make up that difference just at that seam, and they can do that. But this is just a walkthrough of, you know, what I've got to deal with. I've obviously got to do like that ceiling piece right there. There's a piece right there that's going to have sheetrock wrapped around it. I'll show you how to do that. That's really easy. Same thing right here, another soffit. And those are just covering pipes. So this might end up being like a media wall. Actually, that looks like that might be a built-in. See, when you have wires like that right there, see how it says no box? That usually means that a wall such as that, which I'll pan out, a wall such as that sometimes can be a built-in wall, maybe some bookshelves or whatever's there. And then these outlets right here, sure we all know what those kind of outlets are for. So this is actually what they call central vacuum. You don't have to drag around a vacuum, you just drag around a hose. Coming through a closet right here, this is what's called a pocket door. So this is what a pocket door looks like. This builder, what I like about this guy is he actually overlays most of his pocket doors so that you end up with a much more sturdier wall. Otherwise, you're basically just, you're just relying on screwing to those metal pieces, and they're not as sturdy that way. You can see, just checking for nailers. Nailers look good there. So that corner right there, that looks good. That corner right there looks good. Obviously, we're going to have to mark out those pipes. So those pipes right there, we'll have to mark out on the sheetrock. That way we don't hit them. See, all the way across. Because that's enough to where, you know, you wouldn't want to blow through that pipe. I mean, look at it. Look what's going on here. So I'll have to kind of skip that. When the plumber was drilling through, obviously he cracked out the stud because he was so close to the edge. Almost happened right there too, see? Another wet wall, like a mini bathroom. And then here's one of those other nailers that I'm talking about. So when you're looking at this wall, obviously you've got no problem putting a piece of sheetrock on there, but when you come to putting a piece of sheetrock on there, I mean, you're only dealing with, again, you know, a 1/2 inch. So you're going to want to sheetrock this wall first. Looks like they got some outside piping. Sometimes that's just the easier way to do it. Like I said, you know, I mean, that's just mechanical room stuff. So this is the mechanical side. So what happens sometimes here, sheetrock over any insulation. That way, just you don't have issues. But stuff like that can always be done after the fact. Another soffit right there that I'll be sheetrocking. This is obviously going to have a drop ceiling. You go through the job and you check all your corners. The way it gives you an idea of how you're going to start things. Just check everything out. Takes time. Now, normally, if I had another guy, what would happen is the other guy would be setting everything up while I go through and mark things out, check things out, just to see, you know, how I'm going to start. Easy money, and of course I'm going to do it. Right there. See these screws? These are the screws that I always use. There aren't too many people that I know that use a fine thread screw like I do. This is 6 by 1 1/4 inch screws. Good for using on 5/8 and 1/2 inch. You can use it on other, you know, like 3/8 and 1/4 inch, but when you're using it on thinner board, what you have to be careful of, even more so, is that screw penetration. The majority of the work that I used to do, 5/8 or 1/2 inch. Usually in garages, you'll have 5/8 or commercial jobs. Now the sun's coming out. I love it. So I think one thing that I do miss about sheetrocking, it would always force me to go to a lot of the jobs that I did, especially around the Falmouth, Cape and Islands area, they were scenic because a lot of builders that I did work for, I kind of miss, I guess you'd say, the scenery. What was cool is I could take my drone. But anyways, let's get back to showing you what we're doing here. So this is what's called a T-square. You always want to make sure you have one of those. You want to make sure you have extension cords. I prefer to have 3 cords. You're going to want one of these right here. You don't have to get this exact kind, but this is what's called the keyhole saw. It just assists in cutting holes, jog outs that they're called. I'm sure I'll have a jog in here because I have soffits. Get yourselves one of these. This is actually an official Sheetrock hammer. This is a screw gun. I prefer the DeWalt series, but when you look at this gun, it's a 6 amp and it runs at 5,300 minimum RPM. One of these. You don't have to have it. So this item right here, this is called, or this is what we call a foot jack. Then you should get yourself one of these. This is a router, and this is actually the RotoZip brand, which kind of really, there we go. So the tag is still on there. So it's not variable speed, but this one is actually supposedly designed for a sheetrocker. Don't know exactly what makes it designed for a sheetrocker. Definitely get yourself a pack of blades. You don't have to get Milwaukee. This is just what I have. Get yourself a tape or two, and then to mark things out. But this is actually a piece of sheetrock, and what it is, you can see it's that beveled edge piece. It's stronger because it's more compressed in this area, so it holds together better. And then the other thing you need, or you should get, a pouch. Something to hold your screws, your tape, your knife, a little section to hold your hammer. Hammer! And I also get a marker. So I think this is called a Magnum marker. I don't know what the name brand is other than calling it Magnum. It's just a real large, thick marker, and it just helps or aids with marking things, such as the marks that are on there. The other thing you want to consider getting is this type of drywall bit. This is for the router. Definitely get yourself a package, especially if you're not familiar with how to use those. Reason why I recommend these are called guide points. And you can see, I think right on there, right on the tip, why it's called a guide point. So the tip will punch through the sheetrock as it's spinning, and then this little section that's not cut out, you can see it right there. It doesn't have a cutting surface. So that actually will ride along the edge of the box. If I could show you a box. So that's not a good example of how something's cut. That's something that somebody put in after the fact. But what will happen is the router bit will ride on that outside edge, if you can see like that, and it will only cut the sheetrock itself, as long as you're careful. I mean, you still have to be careful with how you're doing it. The other thing that I'd recommend kind of goes along with having these, but because I haven't been sheetrocking, I'm going to have to make myself a blade. So what I'll probably end up doing is I'll just take one of these blades out of this package, take some tape, wrap it around the pencil, and I'll make my own razor blade. It's been done before, just like making my own T-squares. It happens. You might also want something that's called a 6-way, or for me, just because it's by myself, I'm going to use what's called a 3-way. That way I can plug main power into that with an extension cord, and then run 3 accessories off of this. Usually it's going to be the gun, a router, and maybe like a light or something else. And do I recommend using this as a knife? No, don't do it. Use actually a knife. That way it's safe. For me, it's always been safety third. Not really, it just sounds good. First thing that I'd say that you do, just grab your tape measure. You want to measure your height first. So from floor to ceiling. So we're dealing with a concrete floor. An exact number or thereabouts, it would be 90 1/4. You want to be able to keep the sheetrock off of the concrete. You don't want the sheetrock technically to be able to wick any water from the concrete. And I'm not saying that there's water on the concrete, but it's just concrete is porous. And especially when you get to outside walls, you're a little better off having the sheetrock up at least a 1/2 inch away, 3/4 inch, whatever. Because you know there's going to be flooring going on this. This isn't going to stay concrete. They're going to put some type of tile, some type of carpet, maybe even hardwood flooring, something that's going to fill that gap that you're creating. If you ever drop any of your tools or screws, try not to drop any of your tools, but if you drop any of your screws, you hear them hit the ground, especially if you're in a tub or a shower, immediately pick them up. Don't not pick it up, because if you do, it'll end up biting you, and that screw can sometimes cause some major damage, so just be careful. I don't know if you can see it, right there, that's called a jog. And I'll walk over there and show you what I'm talking about. So in order to get these pipes to go through to the other section, what they did is you're going to have to jog this out. So these pipes are pretty much non-movable, okay? So when you cut your sheetrock or when you bring your piece in, you're going to want to make sure you what's called jog this out, okay? When they're doing a drop ceiling, the drop ceiling can only go as high or as low as whatever pipe is in the way. When you look right here, okay, you can see right there that there's a pipe that's actually sticking out of the wall. So technically, the ceiling height down here, it can't go any higher than that. If anything, it's going to be lower because the drop ceiling is going to be in a channel. So that's probably going to be dropped down to there. I'm just going to prep this out. So I'm getting my length off the back wall, and I'm going to come to the edge of this tub, which that's 34 inches, at a height of, it says 14, okay, and that's to this ceiling or floor joist, depending upon how you want to look at it. It's a ceiling joist for me, but it's technically a floor joist. And I'm going to keep it down a little bit so I know that when I do this number, I'm going to take my tape and put it on the top here. And as I measure up, I can see 14 inches is going to give it what I call just squeak room. That way, when it comes up against here, it's going to be tight up against the top of this tub edge. Now what you want to do is you want to measure the length of the wall. I'll just grab it onto that right there. Bring it over. And as I look at that, I can see the exact measurement is 102 3/4, but that's not what we want. So let's just say you put this wall on, okay? When you put that wall on, you technically know whatever wall is going to be that 90. So we've got a wall that's right here. That's a 90-degree wall that abuts that wall that we're doing right there. So we know we can have 3/8 or a 1/4 inch gap over there. And we also know that we can have 3/8 to a 1/4 inch gap over there. So when you get that measurement, you can reduce your measurement so that the sheet actually fits. So now visually looking at that wall being 102 4, which it's actually 102 1/2. The reason why I say 4 is it's what's called the 1/8 scale. When you look at the tape, obviously each tape is different, but in this tape you can see, I don't know if you can see, focus. Come on, just focus on that. It's actually the light. I can't even see if you see that. But anyways, on the tape, you've got 1/4 inch increments, 1/8 and 16. 16 is not necessary for sheetrocking, so I use the 1/8 scale. So when I measured that wall, I can see that the exact measurement is 102 3/4. I'm not going to have a gap at that corner of the wall. So my gap is actually going to be over here. Because we're actually cutting something out, there's having a tight number and there's having a loose number. Normally, if it was just a wall where there were no cutouts, you could use a loose number. But I'm going to use a tight number only on this side because I know that when I measured across from that edge there to that edge of the tub, that it came out to 34 inches. I know that I want my piece of sheetrock at the top there to actually be butted up against there. And I'll show you the reason why I'm jogging it out. It's just, in my mind, if you've got the sheets to do it, you're a lot better off not putting little division joints. The way this is done is there's a furring strip here, there's a furring strip here, there's a stud here, there's a stud here, there's a stud here, okay? So this stud is independent from these two. So when I screw this, I'm going to screw this section here and here. I'm not going to be screwing to the top, okay? Now, if I divided the sheet right here, it's too close to where you see this furring strip. The furring strip, this edge, actually lines up with this edge of the tub, and that's no good. You can't, so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to jog it out. I don't know if any of that makes sense, but let's just do it. 102 2. That's 102 1/4. I just want to take a screw. You want to load it up on the gun. Just basically putting it onto the Phillips end. And the shaft in here is actually magnetic, so it's going to hold on to the screw, see? Take your screw gun, you set yourself up. So I'm going to put it on the ground, and I'm going to bring that sheet in. Now these pieces of sheetrock right here, these are 4 feet tall by 12 feet wide. okay, or long. Drag it out. You take your razor blade, and you're gonna mark on the sheet that 102 1/4. All right. Take your T-square, put it right on that top edge, slide it across till you hit the knife. And it isn't about slamming this knife in here and trying to cut through the entire sheet. It's basically just you're grazing the paper. All you're doing is you're just lightly cutting this surface of the paper. That way the sheet can snap, okay? Now some people come this way, and what they'll do is they'll take their knife and they'll come into the gap that's right here and slice in. And if you do that, what ends up happening is you have what's called flags. So on the good side, or the plastered side of the paper that's on this side, which is the blue side, it's actually why it's called blue board, because it's blue. It's designed to hold plaster better. What I do is I take my knife, you break that sheet so that you have this groove or this V shape right here, and then you come around and you basically just, you reach down and you score the other side. It's not cutting through the paper, you're just scoring. And that way, this, what I'm going to do right here, it takes some getting used to, okay? So, you snap it, okay? And then if you have any, like, jagged little areas, you can go ahead and just kind of, hit those off. It's a little bit different because I'm using, my custom knife. So now we're going to turn this blue side out. Right now it's brown side out. Turn it around. We know that our number was what? 14. So I'm going to come down 14. Put a mark. So I'm marking the blue side. Then I'm coming out 34. Doing another mark. The way I'm going to do this is just the way that I've kind of, taught myself, or you learn. So when you take the tape and the knife actually just kind of sticks out just a little bit. See how the blade sticks out? And you take your thumb, which, yep, that's why you don't use the knife that I'm using. And what you do is you find that 14 that you just marked, you put the blade into where that 14 is, and then you mark up top. You kind of you keep your thumb and your index finger along that edge right there, and what happens is your finger will very lightly slide against the top of the sheet. Watch. And you just want to make sure you don't go past that 34, which a 34 is right there. So we've got that 14, and you're just slicing the paper, okay? Stop it, just stop just short of the 34. Take your T-square. Now I'm going to come up. I'm going to stop just short of that right there too, okay? Then take your keyhole saw, all right? I'm going to keyhole saw this whole edge. That's why you do that line. It gives your keyhole saw something to follow. Now you just take the sheet. You can walk around. Just lightly score the back side of that paper. And watch. It takes some, I guess, practice doing stuff like that. You take your sheet, spit on your hands so you can grip it, and then just bring the sheet into the room. See, I'm doing a video. It messes me up. Before I do that, we got to jog that corner over there so that the pipe will fit. Or so at least the sheet will fit in. So again, because this is a tight measurement, or this is what we were coming up against. So we got 12 inches over. That's giving it a 1/2 of an inch. Coming up off of the tub, 12 inches again. 12 over to jog to that pipe, and then up 12. Coming over 12, mark it. Come up 12, mark it. Do that same thing. Bring that 12 over to that 12 right there. And I've got that 12 mark right there, and I'm going to keyhole saw it down, okay? Then you can break it and then cut it on that back side of the paper. And then you've got little, sections right here that you can just slice off. Then you just want to make sure you clean up all your edges, because we're trying to go tight against that top. Now this piece should fit in like a glove. Now this is where the marker comes in handy. You'll see what I'm going to mark. You have to mark the strapping, or at least you have to look at it. So you can see that these studs right here that are furred out, they actually pretty much line up to the joists that are here, so visually you know that there's no issue there. You also know from this tub edge, where you're going to screw to is technically that second stud over, okay? On this one, it doesn't line up, so what I'll do is I'll put like a line on the edge of the joist that's right here. That way I know that I just have to move over one stud to be able to hit that. You also want to make sure you don't come down and actually screw through the fiberglass tub section right here. You want to make sure you come up about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches, okay? There's no pipes in the way. Everything looks good. Got a wire right here that I'm gonna throw up in the ceiling. That way it's out of my way. All these wires look good. Now let's bring the sheet in. Now this is where a second guy would come in handy, because the second guy would have a screw gun and a screw ready to screw off this sheet. So I just basically come in, pick up the gun, put it in between my legs, that way I can hold it, put the sheet in, make sure it looks good, make sure I've got no issues, everything looks tight and nice. I'm going to put a screw in it just to hold it in place. Check the whole sheet, make sure it looks good, everything looks great. Tack this side. Again, make sure you come up that 1.5 inches, 2 inches. Now checking these screws, because I haven't touched the gun in a while. You want to make sure that the screws, when you put them in, just sit, not flush. You want them just slightly beyond flush. So like on the gun, there's a depth setting. You can either bring the screw out or you can bring the screw in. So on this one, I'm just going to give it a click in, which depending upon the gun that you have, it's going to have an arrow and show you which way to go. Now I'm going to screw what's called the field. So I'm going to get my bottoms first. So where these studs are here, so there's a stud there, that stud. I'm going to hit those studs first, and then I'm going to screw the field. That doesn't normally happen to me, but there's a nail right here. That nail that I was telling you was preventing me from getting the screw where I wanted to get it. So now that I got my edge, now I'm going to go for the field. I can tell this was my son's gun. Didn't even have to look at it. Tell by the way it's set for him. The screw bit must be a little messed up. See, the screw bit's messed up. I might have to change that bit. That's just from sometimes the difference in how people do stuff. There's a difference in how we put screws in walls. Normally I don't grab a crate for this stuff, but because that tip is not in the greatest shape, it's causing me to miss on my tops. So if I get top side, I'll be able to screw it better. Measuring this bottom sheet. Exact number is 68 6, or 68 3/4, okay? I'm actually going to go 68 4, giving it just that little squeak room, just so that I know that I can get the sheet in. So I'm going to grab a height. I can see we're looking at 42, and that's going to be the height of the sheet. So I'm going to take 6 inches off the sheet because it's 48, okay? So 68 4 by 42. I actually have it sitting inside the shower unit. You want to get the measurements for all these pipes. I'm going to get centers, okay? And you've got room. So these don't have to be exact numbers. So the way I usually do it is I do it in succession of how pipes are laid out. So when I'm looking at this white pipe is going to be first because that's going to be the first center line. This copper pipe, this is going to be the next one, then that one. And I'm going to transfer those marks onto that sheet. So I've got 23 and 5, 24 and 2, 27 and 2. So come over, put a mark at 23 and 5, 24 and 2, then 27 and 2. Now I'm going to come down, okay? You don't want to come up because you're actually going to be jacking the sheet up to meet this seam to that seam, okay? So we're going to come down, that first pipe, 25. So I'm going to come down 25, put a little mark there. Next one, 21, and then 20 and 2. So 21 and 20 and 2. And then what you do is you just take your chalk, and I just call them crosshairs. Bring the sheet out so you can see. So now you know the diameter of this pipe is basically 2.5, just because it has a collar on it. So I'm just going to do a circle hole through, and when you get to the base of this base of this knife, this is actually the width of what the pipe is for copper pipe. So this is the first copper pipe. And you make it slightly oversized. That way you just know it's going to fit. Or just, you know, adjustments from left to right, up and down type of stuff. You just want to make sure you stab through. And then on these, I'll do a full slice in, down, up, and then just round it up. Just like that. Make sure there are no pieces on that back side. Now I'm going to take the sheet, put it into position, make sure everything looks good, and once we jack that up, that should actually look nice. I'm going to grab what's called a foot jack. So this is where that foot jack thing comes into play. I'm going to go to the middle of the sheet, grab your gun with a screw on it, check behind, make sure there are no pipes. If there are pipes that you could hit with these screws, you want to take a chalk and mark it. So nothing can be hit. You want to kick it in. You want to lift up and make sure that you're over on your edge to where the tub is, or the shower. And I put screws right across this edge. That way I know the sheet will stay in place. That's it. So on this wall, there's this light switch right here. So I'm going to put an X just so that you can see. And this is what's called, this is probably a triple gang. 1, 2, 3. So this is a triple gang box, meaning that there's actually going to be 3 switches in here. So we'll just, you plunge, so you turn this on, which is supposed to do something when you turn it on. Okay. While that's spinning, you'll be able to plunge it through the sheetrock. You don't have to put a lot of pressure on it. It's kind of like just using the weight of the tool and just going in. Now try to get to that edge because that box is packed with wires. We did pack it with our hatchet, or push it in with our fingers, but you don't want a chance cutting any of those wires. Now when you go in, you're going to plunge it in. You're going to go till you hit the side of the box. You can feel it and you can hear it. Then you just bring the router bit out and then go back in. And what happens is you're going to ride on that outside edge of the box. Now when you do an outside edge, it's counterclockwise rotation. So you're bringing it in a counterclockwise kind of, I guess, way. If you're doing something, say, is this is clockwise. Because now you're technically doing an outside. Even though it's the inside of a door frame, it's actually going to be the outside that you're routing. If that makes any sense. So here, just watch, I'll show you. Plunge it in, go into the box, bring it out, and then you're just going to guide it, ride it right along that box. Just like that. This is actually a tip that I can show you. So when you see that sheet, okay, this is actually what's called, this is like a, they kind of call this like a knee wall or a half wall, all right? And you can see what I did. Well, that actually stops right there where that line is on both sides, you can see. Why did I put my 48-inch piece first? So you can see I'm a ½ inch off the ground there. Got my hole for the supply feed for the toilet. But when I measured this back wall that's right here, this back wall is actually over. It's actually over 48 inches. I'm going to go right up to that top plate right there at about 52 inches, and then I'm going to jog that little pipe in. Now, technically, I only have to go to that pipe, but this is just the way I do things. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to score the back side of this right here. Like you can see, I already did. Now watch. I scored it. Now I can break it. And I'm going to take my knife, and I'm going to come across that line, like my knife. Just like that. Snap it. And then start my back wall with it. See? And the reason why I did that too, I didn't want to bring a piece down because of the blocking behind here. If I brought a piece down, I'd be too close to where the edges are here. So you start from the bottom up, and then that's how that piece goes in. Now, see, there's that gap that I was talking about there. So you see you got a slight gap there, slight gap there. I just measured what the width of that back wall was, made sure that the top was going to be the same thing, cut my length. I subtracted about 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little touch more, maybe 3/8. And that way you know that the piece is going to fit in side to side, especially when you're dealing with like basement type stuff, because when you're dealing with basement things, these outside walls, these aren't necessarily always going to be straight. So now we start off with that piece. Now my next piece can go on top of that. We're obviously going to end up with a much shorter piece, and might be able to use that somewhere else, like, say, maybe that header. see this piece right here? This is the bottom. So I'm gonna come up, put a mark at 40.5, or you could come down and mark 7.5. But because I'm working with a knife that's not really a knife, to get a more accurate number, I'm actually coming from the ways that I should. Otherwise, you don't get that nice straight line. Or not a straight line. Otherwise, you don't get that accurate number. Just like that. So now that I did that back wall right there, I'm going to measure my side here. Exact number will be 23 and 4. We're going to cut it back to 23 and 2. Then coming in on this wall right here, bring that right across. Same number, 23 and 2. And on this, actually works for top and bottom sheet. So I can go ahead and cut 4 of them. And then because we already know what the height is, just because we've already hung this top sheet that's right here, and then we hung the bottom sheet, we know we took off 7.5 inches. So when I go to the pile, I'm gonna cut 4 pieces, and then 2 of them are gonna be ripped off at 7.5 inches. That's just called the takeoff. This has got some wires in here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mark where I've got a wire at the top of the sheet here, 2 lines and an X. And that way when I put this up, I know not to put anything there. And I've also got another wire right here, which that one I'm gonna have to do something else with. Just kind of hold it in place. It's easy to tack it on the opposite side. So, because the way the sheet went up, right, we got it going up against this wall right here. So if you tack it down there with a screw, it's not going to go anywhere because we're already hitting that top edge of the sheet. Then just grab your bottom. And this one, oh, there must be a screw in there. Hey, look at that. So, this bottom one, basically you're just going to do the opposite. Now, normally you can take your knife, you just stab it into the sheet. This one's a little tough because I'm working with, I guess, effectively what you'd call a shank. And I'm just going to pull the sheet up. Now, I could have tacked it there, but tacking it here was just a better solution because that way I'm not trying to cross things over, lean up against the wall, get my own way, you know? And then take these 2 pieces up for the other side. So take this piece, put it out of the way, grab this one, throw it in. I call it a pendulum. So putting the screw in that corner, so I'm going on the bottom right-hand corner because the whole sheet is up against the wall on that back side. It's not going to go anywhere. Only one screw holding that piece of sheetrock in, a small piece. Throw it in my bottom. This piece that I installed right here, this is what's called a header. All right? At least in sheetrock terms and in construction terms. So I'm not sure how well this is going here. So this would be a header, and these pieces right here, here, and here would be called your legs. There's 2 different ways to cut that out, and I'm going to show you how to do that. One's using keyhole saw. The other one's going to be using the router. Now, if you were using the keyhole saw, right, for doing that, you're going to use that in combination with, this is not a knife, but this is my makeshift knife for today. But you're going to use the keyhole saw, and what you're going to do is you would slice up this whole side, like what I'm going to show you right now. And then you would slice up the other side too, and then take your knife, your blade, and you'd come across and slice that whole section. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how the router works. So you grab your router, you duck so you don't bang your head, switch it on, and we're tracing this side. Now I can still slice it, but I'm going to take my router and go right across that whole top edge. And obviously you hold the bottom of the piece so it doesn't chop your foot off when it finally lets go. When the kid would come out of the area when he was done, he'd give it a little bit of a tap and he'd get dusted. I don't do stuff like that though. Now normally after doing a closet like that, right there, we'd go ahead and button up this outside end, finish that leg that's over there, and then be on our way to another room. But I'm going to show you a pro tip. So you see that room that's right in there? See how there's another room? Well, that back wall right there, that is longer than we wouldn't be able to get here. I'm gonna bring you around the other side so I can show you what I'm talking about. So we'd have to walk the sheets all the way around, come in this way, and then if you can see, it would just be so much harder to try to get a sheet in here. Because you'd have to curve a sheet around, try to shoot it through that back wall. And fortunately, that back wall is open, so that kind of doesn't matter in this case. But when you see this wall right here, if you just leave that one open, you'll be able to bring your sheets through, at least the two back wall sheets, so the top and the bottom sheet. Or you bring in your top sheet, you do your top sheet, fully screwed off, then you bring in your bottom sheet, fully screw that off. Then if you wanted, you could go ahead and button up that outside and then finish all the rest of the other walls. Well, I mean, you don't have to fully screw off the sheets. It's just, I'm used to just doing stuff like while you're there, just get it done. It's my 2 cents. Not a knife. 2 cents. Not a knife. Not a knife. I can just leave that there. I already shot the gun into the other room, and I'll just drag it in. Just like that. Bring you in, show you that this wall's all done. Scribbly marks right there with the two lines, line on top, line on bottom. All that indicates is no screws within that portion of the sheet, and then the same thing down there. That squiggly line, no screws within that area of the sheet as well. So now checking those nailers like we were talking about before. So here's the left side and here's the right side. When you look at this right side here, this right here, so this is actually the surface that we're going to be screwing onto. Let's just say we hung this wall first. So you take a piece of sheetrock, stick it up on there, and now look, you've got nothing to screw to. Now if you go this way, obviously you have no issue. However, because we're only dealing with literally a ½ an inch of space there, when you bring your tape across and you get a number, the exact number on that is 39. It's right at that bend right there. I'm actually going to cut this back to 38 and 7, which is 7/8. So that way when you throw this piece on like this, obviously this is going to be a full sheet. This is just a small little piece to show you. There'll be more meat to grab onto. If you did leave a gap, the screw would have a tendency to what's called break out. And it would basically just, it would break the material. I hope that makes sense. It's just like these little tiny tips. There's so many of them throughout the years. I mean, you got to remember, I've been doing this for 20 years, so I'm taking the time to make this video to hopefully help somebody that has never done it before. maybe they want to try sheetrocking, you can watch this video and just get some tips. Now this tip is kind of easy for me to say it, maybe harder for you to understand. So when you're measuring like a wall like this, okay, you can see up here, we do have a soffit or something that we need to jog out. So we need a top and bottom sheet. Easiest way to go to the pile and make full use of your time or walking, measure your bottom sheet. I can see I'm 41 2, which is 41 1/4. On this header, you want to just come over because this is furred out and we're not dealing with jack studs that are here. So we don't have to divide the line up here. Like, we don't have to break it on a stud, it's what it's called. We can break it anywhere we want. So in this particular case, when we do measure that bottom sheet, we can see it's 41 2. You just add 5+ inches onto that number, and that way it gives you both top and bottom sheets. Pro tip. So now, however you want to walk over to your pile and take your sheets off. I'm right-hand dominant, so I usually whip out the tape this way. So I'm going to mark my 41 2. Then I'm going to take my tape edge, stick it into that 41 2, and then I know that I want to at least have, what, 5 or 6 or whatever inches past that, but just to be even, I'm just going to go ahead and mark it at 48. And that's bringing it over that 5 inches, if you get what I'm saying. Then just go ahead and cut both pieces at the same time. Break them. Bring this one out. Done. You can see I've got my gun right on my milk crate with a screw on the tip, ready to go. So when I walk in, all I've got to do is just reach down and grab that gun and everything's ready to go. Right up. Throw it into the jacket. So here's a good one right here to explain. How would you get that angle? It's actually very easy. Measure out your piece. From the sheetrock here to the edge of this door frame is 12 1/2. Go cut yourself 2 12 1/2s. Take your first piece, and I like to put it up factory edge, up against the wall corner. Put it right up against it, slide it up until this point meets that corner. And take your tape out, measure down from the tip of that angle right there where it meets the sheetrock. And I've got 10 and 5. 10 and 5/8. Then you take that 10 and 5/8, and you're going to come down on this side on that piece you just held up. So 10 and 5. And then you just get a straight edge. I can use my tape. And you want to just score a line. Break it off. Boom, there you go. Next thing on this job, sweep up and make little piles. If you're not scrapping it out, just make sure you make it easy for the builder or whoever to take care of it. Little closet with its outside section, that's all done. Little patch on that doorway. This is that bathroom in there. That's where the toilet is. Little toilet cubby. Again, drop ceiling. All the surround for the shower. It's all set up for corner beads. It's all screwed off. Nicely cut out. Little blowout right there. That was an existing screw that I didn't notice. But the cleanup guy should have taken care of it. So in this larger room, there's a whole bunch of beadwork that needs to be done. There's all that softened area right there. And one thing that I was going to recommend, whenever you have a section where corner bead is going to go on a corner such as this, do not use the rolled or tapered edge of the sheet. The rolled or tapered edge of the sheet is this factory section right here. And when you look at the profile of the sheet, you can see how it dives in. And that makes it so that you can put tape and then smooth it out with plaster. Soffit, stairway's all set. A little soffit there. Again, this is going to be a drop ceiling. Little blowout right there. That's actually the top of a lally column. Totally acceptable. Plasterers will just put a little tape over there, skim it with plaster, and be all set. Bathroom, probably can't see in here. Really dark. This was that other bathroom. Back side of here. Little accessory electrical panel for the basement. I ended up stripping this sheet right here so I could get all my pipes and collars through that were attached to the studs. And that way you don't mess with anything. All those pipes right there, they're all put through. Strip the sheet. Yeah, like I said, most important thing, clean up when you're done. Oh, one more thing. And then coming through here, another little doorway. Kind of a little funky area. There's going to be a refrigerator that's going to go inside that. Just another wall that's done. And that's it. Then just make sure before you leave, cut all the power, unplug anything that you plugged in. That way everything's all set and it's not going to be any issues when you leave.